"Why is a dead employee working tonight?" I asked, and the laughter around the table disappeared so fast it almost felt rehearsed. 5 seconds earlier, I had been the evening entertainment. Logan Reed, 27 years old, Omega, apparently invited to Boston's most expensive family memorial, so a room full of alphas could confirm that Vincent Moretti had developed questionable taste in companions. "Relax, Logan," Caleb Moretti had said, sliding a staff sheet toward me with 2 fingers. "Maybe checking names will give you something useful to do." Someone near the end of the table laughed. Another alpha called me pretty insurance. I smiled because smiling was easier than explaining that people became strangely creative when they thought quiet meant harmless. "I am honored," I said. "Usually people wait until dessert before assigning me clerical work." Vincent, seated beside me in a dark charcoal suit, turned his head slightly. He did not smile. That was probably why everyone else did. Vincent Moretti was 39, alpha, head of the clan, and built from the kind of calm authority that made an entire room adjust its volume when he looked up. He had already warned me that his relatives could be difficult. Difficult, apparently, was family language for emotionally exhausting with excellent tailoring. I looked down at the staff sheet Caleb had pushed toward me. Servers, bartenders, kitchen staff, security support. Nothing unusual. Then one name stopped me. Daniel Mercer. I read it twice. My stomach tightened. 6 months earlier, when Vincent had asked me to help reorganize emergency contacts for several family-owned hotels, I had seen Daniel Mercer's name on an archived personnel file. Former banquet supervisor. Deceased. I looked across the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers. White tablecloths. Soft jazz. Moretti relatives talking over expensive wine. Then I saw him. A waiter near the west wall wore a badge that said Daniel Mercer. He was younger than the photograph I remembered. Different face. Different build. Same name. Logan. Vincent asked quietly. My expression must have changed. "Do you know Daniel Mercer?" I asked. Caleb leaned back. "Why?" "Because his badge is on someone working tonight." The older alpha beside Caleb frowned. "So?" I looked at Vincent instead. "Daniel Mercer died 6 months ago." Silence. Real silence this time. Vincent's eyes shifted toward the waiter without turning his head completely. Good. He understood not to stare. Caleb gave a short laugh that sounded less confident than before. Maybe they reused the name. Hotels do not usually recycle deceased employee identities for convenience. You sound very sure. I used to work in hotel emergency preparedness. Vincent looked at me. That was new information for him too. Excellent timing, Logan. Nothing says healthy relationship like revealing professional history during a memorial dinner. Used to, he asked. Later. I kept my voice low. Right now, I need the venue manager. Caleb rolled his eyes. Over a badge? I looked at him. Over a person wearing the identity of someone who cannot possibly be here. Vincent did not ask whether I was overreacting. He did not tell me to calm down. He simply reached for his phone and sent one message. Manager is coming. Something in my chest loosened. Trust was dangerous that way. It made you notice when someone gave it without demanding proof first. I looked back toward the west wall. The waiter was gone. That bothered me more than seeing him. I scanned the room slowly. Service doors. Ballroom entrance. North corridor. Then I saw another server near the champagne station. His badge read Thomas Hale. I knew that name too. Former employee. Left the company last year. My pulse climbed. Vincent. What? The first badge was not the only problem. He followed my gaze. I found a third unfamiliar face near the service corridor. Then a fourth near the private elevator. For people. For old staff identities. For different positions around the room. I stopped smiling. Do not move yet, I said. Vincent looked at me, calm and immediate. Why? I counted the distances between them and felt an old part of my brain wake up. The part one had spent years trying to silence. Because whoever they are, they did not sneak into this event. I looked at the 4 strangers and then at Vincent. They were placed here. Vincent did not move. That was the first thing he did right. The second was pretending nothing had changed. He lifted his glass, glanced toward Caleb, and said something about the memorial schedule while I kept my eyes on the room without making it obvious. For fake identities. For different positions. One near the west wall. One near the champagne station. One near the service corridor. One near the private elevator. That was not random placement. That was coverage. I hated when my brain used words like coverage. It meant the old instincts were fully awake now. Logan, Vincent said quietly, still looking toward the table. Tell me what you need. I almost turned to him too fast. You believe me? You recognized a dead employee's name from 6 months ago, and then found 3 more false identities in under a minute. He took a slow sip. I am not arrogant enough to call that coincidence. That was inconveniently attractive as a personality trait, so I ignored it. Venue manager first. Quietly. No security rush, no announcement, no sudden exits. Caleb looked over. Why are you whispering? Because I enjoy making you nervous. He frowned. You are doing a great job. Thank you. Vincent's phone vibrated once. He checked the message without changing expression. Manager is in the North Hall. She will come through the kitchen entrance. Good. I looked again toward the private elevator. The man wearing the 4th false badge had not moved more than 5 feet. That was strange for event staff. Real hotel employees move constantly. Trays. Glassware. Questions. Problems. This man was performing stillness instead of performing work. There, I said softly. 4th one. Vincent followed my gaze indirectly through the reflection in a mirrored column. Near the elevator. Yes. You noticed him because he is standing still? Because everyone around him knows where they are going. I nodded toward 2 actual servers crossing the room. Watch their movement. They check tables, signal each other, adjust routes. He watches people instead of tasks. Vincent's jaw tightened. Who? Mostly you. His fingers paused around the glass. Only for a second. Then normal. Again. Good control. And the others? Different angles. Same pattern. The venue manager arrived 3 minutes later through the side entrance. A white woman in her early 50s named Margaret Ellis. She smiled professionally as if nothing were wrong and stopped beside our table. Mr. Moretti. Mr. Reed. I showed her the staff sheet under the table. I need you to verify 4 names without alerting anyone. She read them. Her expression barely changed, but her breathing did. These people are not scheduled tonight. Are the names real? I asked. 2 are former employees. 1 is deceased. 1 transferred to another property nearly a year ago. My stomach dropped slightly. So none of the people wearing these badges belong here. Correct. Vincent's voice stayed level. How did they get inside? Margaret looked uncomfortable. I do not know yet. Do not investigate openly, I said. She looked at me. Why? Because if they realize we noticed, they change whatever they planned. Caleb made a dismissive sound. You are assuming there is a plan. I pointed toward the west side without looking directly. 1 person is positioned near the ballroom exit. 1 near drinks. 1 near staff access. 1 near Vincent's private elevator. Caleb stopped smiling. Margaret looked at the room differently now. That is not normal staffing. Exactly. I asked her 1 more question. Who has access to internal event schedules? Senior hotel management, event coordination, private security, and the family office. Vincent looked at me. There it was. The first crack in the problem. Not strangers getting inside. Information getting out. Margaret excused herself calmly and returned toward the kitchen to verify staff assignments through internal channels. I kept watching the room. Then something small changed. 1 of the false servers touched his earpiece. Another checked the ballroom clock. The man near the elevator stepped 2 feet closer to the doors. My pulse climbed. Vincent, I see it. Do you? They are waiting for something. I looked at the clock. 9:32. Then at the printed event schedule Caleb had pushed toward me earlier. Vincent's departure time was listed as 9:40. I knew that was wrong. He had told me at dinner we were staying until 10. I looked at him. What time are you supposed to leave? 10. I turned the schedule toward him. His expression changed. That says 9:40. Yes. Caleb leaned closer. Maybe the schedule changed. Vincent looked at him. It did not. Nobody spoke for a moment. 4 false staff identities. For positions around Vincent's movement path. And a departure time 20 minutes early. I felt the pieces locked together. They are not waiting for the event to end, I said quietly. Vincent's eyes stayed on mine. What are they waiting for? I tapped the false departure time. They are waiting for you to follow a schedule you never approved. The false departure time changed everything. Until then, I could still pretend we were looking at a security problem. Badges. Access. A strange schedule. Things with explanations. Things with forms. Then I looked at the clock again. 9:34. 6 minutes until the time someone expected Vincent to leave. Do not change anything, I said. Vincent turned slightly toward me. Meaning, do not stand. Do not call anyone over. Do not suddenly become the most obvious alpha in Boston. Caleb frowned. That is very specific. He has a gift. Vincent ignored him. What are you thinking? I lowered my voice. If they are positioned for 9:40, they expect movement. If nobody moves, we learn what they do next. Vincent's eyes narrowed. You want to wait. I want them to believe the schedule is still working. That was different, but not enough to make my pulse slow down. Margaret returned through the kitchen entrance with the same professional smile she had worn before. She stopped beside the table and placed a folded dinner receipt near Vincent's plate. Nothing suspicious about that, which was exactly the point. The badges are fraudulent, she said quietly. All four. Caleb stopped pretending not to listen. How? The names were copied from archived employee records. Margaret's voice stayed even. The physical badges were produced recently. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. From your system? From a file format used internally. Vincent looked at me. I did not like that either. Who can access the template? I asked. Hotel management, event administration, and the family office for private functions. Family office. There it was again. The same two words circling every problem. Vincent's hand rested flat on the table. How many people had tonight's schedule? Margaret hesitated. The final version? Yes. 7 outside hotel management. Caleb leaned forward. Who? Vincent looked at him. Not here. Caleb sat back. Good decision. 9:36, for minutes. Across the ballroom, the false waiter near the private elevator checked his watch. The one by the service corridor shifted position. Not much. Just enough. They know the time, I said. Vincent followed the movement through the mirrored column. And someone gave it to them. Maybe. You do not believe in maybe anymore. I believe in evidence. Same thing with better manners. I almost smiled. Almost. Then Vincent's phone vibrated. He looked down. One message. His expression changed. What? I asked. Security. Read it. His eyes moved across the screen. Private elevator has a maintenance issue. They want us to use the west service corridor at 9:40. My entire body went still. Who sent that? Number matches the security office. Margaret looked at the screen. That message is not from my security team. Caleb whispered something under his breath. I did not catch it. Did not need to. The important part was the route. The west service corridor. Exactly where one of the false staff members had been standing. Do not answer, I said. Vincent put the phone face down. Already decided. Good. Very good. My brain was moving faster now. The false schedule had Vincent leaving early. The false message redirected him away from the private elevator. The fake staff positions covered both the expected route and the alternative. That was not improvisation. Someone had mapped his choices. They are building a funnel, I said. Caleb looked confused. A what? A situation where every normal decision sends Vincent toward the same outcome. Vincent's expression hardened. The west corridor. Maybe. There is that word again. Because I am missing one piece. Which piece? I looked at him. Why include me? Silence. Caleb glanced between us. What do you mean? The message says us. I pointed at Vincent's phone. Not Mr. Moretti. Not the principal. Us. Vincent looked back at the message. His face changed slowly. They expected you to be with me. Yes. That bothered me more than the fake badges. My name had never appeared on the public event schedule. I was listed internally as Vincent's guest, nothing more. Anyone outside the family should not have known how close I would stay to him during the memorial. Unless someone had told them. Margaret's voice lowered. Who knew Mr. Reed would attend? Vincent answered without looking away from me. Family office. Senior security. A few relatives. Caleb went pale. You think someone inside gave them Logan too? I think someone gave them more than a schedule, I said. 9:38. 2 minutes. The man near the elevator touched his earpiece again. The man by the west corridor looked toward our table. I kept my face neutral. Vincent, laugh at something. He stared at me. What? Laugh. Why? Because right now you look like you are planning tax reform during a funeral. His mouth twitched despite himself. That is not funny. It worked. He gave a short laugh, low and believable. Several people at the table relaxed automatically. Good. Across the room, the fake staff did not. Better. Now what? Vincent asked. I checked the clock. 9:39. Now we find out what they do when you do not follow the script. The second hand moved. One circle, then another. 9:40. Nobody at our table stood. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then all four false staff members looked toward Vincent at the same time. Not subtle, not accidental, coordinated. My pulse jumped. One of them reached for his phone. Another stepped away from the private elevator. The West Corridor man turned toward the ballroom instead of away from it. Their plan had just lost its timing. And somewhere inside this building, someone was about to realize Vincent Moretti had stopped behaving exactly as expected. At 9:41, the ballroom still looked normal. That was the useful part. People kept eating. A string quartet near the far wall moved into another song. Someone at a neighboring table laughed too loudly at something that was probably not funny. Meanwhile, for people wearing false hotel identities had just realized Vincent was not where they expected him to be. "Logan," Vincent said quietly, "what happens next?" I kept watching reflections instead of faces. They adjust. Meaning somebody makes a new decision. Caleb leaned closer. "And we just sit here?" "For another minute, yes." He stared at me. "That is your plan." "My plan is currently outperforming whatever yours was." Vincent coughed into his hand. I looked at him. Was that a laugh? No, very professional. Margaret returned to our table with another folded receipt. She placed it beside my water glass. "Security has confirmed the 4 identities. We also checked internal communications. The message sent to Mr. Moretti did not originate from our security office." "Can your team monitor the ballroom without changing behavior?" I asked. "Yes." "Then do that." "No confrontation yet." Caleb shook his head. "Why are we taking orders from him?" Vincent answered before I could. "Because he noticed the problem before anyone else." Caleb opened his mouth, then closed it. Small victory. Extremely satisfying. Margaret looked at me. "What else?" I hated that question because I already knew the answer. "I need your staff movement plan." She paused. "The service map?" "Yes. Tonight's floor assignments, emergency access, back-of-house routes, elevator restrictions." Vincent turned toward me. "You know how to read all of that." I looked at him. "I know more than I told you." His expression did not change much, but I knew him well enough to see the difference. Not anger. Surprise. Maybe disappointment. That was worse. Margaret nodded and stepped away. Vincent waited exactly 4 seconds. "How much more?" "This is not an ideal time." "You said later." "Technically, it is later." "Logan." I exhaled slowly. "I used to coordinate emergency preparedness for hotels and convention centers." Caleb blinked. "You mean fire drills?" I looked at him. "Yes, Caleb. 5 years of professional crisis planning was mostly me pointing at exit signs for fun." Vincent gave him one glance. Caleb stopped talking. I continued. "I worked with large properties. Thousands of guests. Staff verification. Evacuation planning. Continuity systems. Communication failures. Crowd movement. Anything that could turn a normal evening into a bad one if nobody prepared." Vincent stared at me. "How long?" "Almost 6 years." "And you never told me?" "You never asked for a resume." That was weak. We both knew it. I looked down at the table. I left because I got tired of walking into beautiful places and immediately noticing how they could fail. The joke disappeared from my voice before I could stop it. I could not sit in a restaurant without checking exits. I could not sleep in a hotel without reading the emergency map. Every quiet room became a list of possible problems. Vincent's expression softened. "So you stopped." I chose something smaller, quieter, and tonight brought it back. I glanced toward the false waiter near the west wall. Apparently my retirement was temporary. Margaret returned with a tablet and placed it beside me. I studied the floor plan. Ballroom, kitchen, north hall, west service corridor, private elevator, staff stairs. I traced the route slowly. Then I noticed something. "This does not match." Margaret leaned closer. "What?" "The printed schedule says Vincent leaves through the private elevator." "Correct. The false message redirects him west." "Yes." I zoomed in on the service layout. "But the west corridor does not lead directly to the parking level." Margaret shook her head. "It leads to a staff transfer lobby first." My stomach tightened. "Which has 2 exits." "Yes." "And which one would security normally use from there?" "South stairwell." Vincent looked at me. "Why does that matter?" I looked across the room. The false staff positions suddenly made more sense. One near the elevator. One near the west corridor. 2 positioned where they could watch whether Vincent moved toward either route. They were not controlling one path. They were observing a decision tree. "They are not waiting for one route," I said. "They are waiting to see which normal option you choose." Vincent went still. "Then what do?" "We do." I looked at the map again. We stopped choosing normal options. Caleb frowned. That sounds easy when you say it. Most useful ideas do. Vincent's gaze stayed on me. You have a route? Not yet. Then what do you have? I looked at the 4 false staff members, then at Margaret's tablet, then back at him. A better question, which is, if they know your schedule, your habits, your security messages, and that I am with you, what exactly do they expect you to do when you think I am in danger? Vincent did not answer. He did not need to. His face already had. Vincent did not answer right away. He looked at me the way people do when the answer is obvious, but saying it aloud makes it worse. I would get you out first, he said. Exactly. Caleb frowned. That is what anyone would do. That is the problem. I looked back at the floor plan. Whoever planned this knows Vincent will prioritize me. If they create the right kind of warning, he will change routes without thinking twice. Vincent's expression hardened. I would think. You would think fast. I kept my voice calm. Fast is not always the same as free. Margaret leaned closer to the tablet. You think they are using Mr. Reed to shape his movement? I think they are using how much Vincent cares about me. That sentence landed harder than I expected. I felt it in the silence before anyone spoke. Caleb looked away first. Vincent did not. Say it clearly, he said. I hated when he made me do that. They are not using me as the target. They are using the way you love me as the map. The ballroom suddenly felt too warm. Vincent's hand tightened once around the edge of the table, then relaxed. What would the message look like, he asked. Something believable. Something urgent enough to make you act before verifying. Margaret glanced at her phone. Security has not sent anything new. Yet, I said, I wished I had kept that thought to myself. 30 seconds later, Vincent's phone vibrated. Of course it did. He looked at the screen, but did not touch it immediately. Progress. What does it say? I asked. He read slowly. Possible medical issue involving your guest. Move Mr. Reed to the private lounge for evaluation. Security escort en route. Caleb went pale. Margaret's face changed instantly. That did not come from my team. I almost laughed, because apparently my nervous system had decided absurdity was healthier than panic. There it is. Vincent turned toward me. You are not going anywhere. Correct. Good. But not for the reason you think. His eyes narrowed. Explain. If you immediately pull me away from the table, they know the message worked. I nodded toward the room. We stay exactly where we are. Logan. Vincent, you are asking me to sit here after someone just tried to move you. Yes. That is not going to be easy. I know. His jaw tightened. For a second, the alpha everyone else knew showed through. The one who solved problems by taking responsibility for every person in the room. Then he looked at me again. Tell me what you need. There it was. Not command. Not protection disguised as control. Trust. I breathed out slowly. First, do not look toward the false staff. Second, do not call your full security detail over here. Third, let Margaret quietly verify which legitimate staff members are near the private lounge and which corridors are clear. Margaret nodded. I can do that through internal channels. Good. Caleb stared at me. And what do we do? Keep behaving like boring rich people at dinner. He looked offended. I can do that. I believe in you. Vincent actually smiled this time. Small. Brief. Human. Across the ballroom, one of the false staff checked his phone again. Another shifted toward the north side. They were waiting for our reaction. We gave them none. How long? Vincent asked. Until their behavior tells us what they expected. And if they move. Security watches. We do not chase. We do not improvise. That last word was mostly for him. He heard it. You think I improvise too much. You are an alpha who runs a powerful clan. Improvisation is probably listed under hobbies. Caleb coughed to hide a laugh. Vincent ignored him. What else? I studied the false message again. Private lounge. That mattered. The private lounge had one obvious route from the ballroom and another staff access point from the North Hall. I looked at Margaret, who normally escorts Vincent from the lounge. 2 senior security officers. Where are they now? She checked quietly. Both were redirected 5 minutes ago to verify a loading dock alarm. My stomach dropped. There it was. Not one fake message. 2 coordinated diversions. They cleared his escort before trying to move us, I said. Vincent's expression went cold. So this was planned around my security habits. Yes. And around you. Yes. Caleb looked between us. Then somebody had to know exactly how Vincent reacts when Logan is involved. Nobody answered. We did not need to. The circle of people who knew that was much smaller than the circle who knew a departure time. Margaret's phone vibrated. She read the update. North Hall is clear. Private lounge is not. One of the false badge holders moved near that entrance. I nodded slowly. Then we have confirmation. Vincent looked at me. Of what? I met his eyes. They never needed to know which route you preferred. They only needed to know which person you would refuse to leave behind. Vincent looked at me for a long second, then slowly leaned back in his chair. That was the hardest thing he had done all night. Not because sitting was difficult, because every instinct in him wanted to move, to take control, to put me behind him and turn the room into a problem he could solve with authority. Instead, he stayed exactly where I had asked him to stay. You want me to do nothing, he said quietly. I want you to do nothing obvious. That is somehow worse. I know. Caleb glanced between us. This is making me uncomfortable. Wonderful, I said. You are finally participating. Margaret nearly smiled. Vincent did not, but his shoulders lowered by half an inch. Good. We needed normal. Normal was camouflage now. The quartet continued playing. Servers carried plates. Someone near the center tables raised a glass for a memorial toast. Outside our small circle, nobody knew anything had changed. That was exactly how I wanted it. Margaret kept her phone below the table while hotel security verified the North Hall, staff elevators, and service areas through ordinary internal communication. No announcements. No sudden movement. No reason for the false staff to know they had been identified. What are we waiting for? Vincent asked. For them to show us which expectation matters most. They already tried the private lounge. Yes. And we did not move. I watched the man near that entrance. He checked his phone, looked toward our table, then walked away as if he had been given a new instruction. There. Vincent followed him through the mirrored wall. He changed direction. Because someone knows the first message failed. Caleb's face tightened. Someone inside the building? Maybe inside the event. I hated saying it, but the evidence kept narrowing. The fake badges came from an internal template. The departure time came from a restricted schedule. The false security messages referenced me specifically. Whoever had shared the information knew not only Vincent's business habits, but our relationship. That was personal knowledge. Family knowledge. Vincent seemed to reach the same conclusion. How many people knew I would bring you tonight? Do not start naming them. I was not going to. You were thinking loudly. His mouth twitched. Apparently that is a thing now. I invented it. Margaret's phone vibrated. She read the update and looked at me. Security confirmed the loading dock alarm was false. Expected. And 2 of the 4 badge holders have moved toward the west side. Vincent's expression sharpened. We should leave before they adjust again. I shook my head. Not yet. His eyes hardened. Logan, if we move now because they moved, they still control the timing. I am not comfortable waiting while you are part of their plan. There it was. The part we had been circling all night. I know. Then stop asking me to pretend that does not matter. I am not. I lowered my voice. I am asking you to trust that protecting me does not always mean moving me somewhere else. The noise of the ballroom seemed farther away for a second. Vincent looked at me, and something in his expression changed. Less alpha. More man. What does it mean tonight? He asked. Stay beside me. Let security clear a route. Let them make the next mistake. His jaw tightened. Beside you. Yes. Not in front. Correct. Caleb looked down at his plate like he had accidentally wandered into a conversation he should not be hearing. Smartest thing he had done all evening. Vincent nodded once. Fine. That sounded painful. It was. I almost laughed. Margaret checked another message. Hotel security has verified a staff-only conference corridor on the east side. It is clear and currently in use. Does it connect to the secured administrative floor? I asked. Yes. And can legitimate security meet us there without crossing the ballroom? Yes. Finally, a route they had not been expecting because it was never part of Vincent's normal movement pattern. I looked at him. We have an option. Your call. 2 words. Simple. But every alpha at the table heard them. Caleb stared at Vincent. You are letting Logan choose? Vincent did not even look at him. Yes. Caleb opened his mouth. Vincent added, because he is the only person in this room who has understood the entire situation from the beginning. Silence. My face felt warmer than I wanted it to. Compliments were suspicious. Public ones were worse. Please do not make this emotional, I muttered. Vincent's voice softened. Too late. Margaret stood casually and began moving toward the east side, as if checking event operations. I waited 30 seconds. Then another 30. No reaction from the false staff. Good. Now, I said. We stood without rushing. Vincent stayed beside me. Not ahead. Caleb and 2 family members followed several steps behind, while legitimate security quietly redirected others in small groups. The ballroom kept breathing around us, unaware. We reached the east corridor without incident. Only after the door closed behind us did I realize how tightly I had been holding my shoulders. Vincent looked at me. You were scared. I am capable of multitasking. Logan. I exhaled. Yes. He nodded as if that mattered more than if I had pretended otherwise. Then Margaret's phone vibrated again. She read the message and stopped walking. What is it? I asked. Her expression had gone pale. Security checked the access log for the badge. Template. Vincent went still. And Margaret looked at him. The file was opened yesterday from a family office account. My stomach dropped. Whose account? She hesitated. That was enough to make the corridor feel colder. Caleb Moretti's. For 1 second, nobody in the corridor moved. Caleb stared at Margaret as if she had spoken in another language. My account. His voice cracked on the last word. Vincent turned toward him slowly. I stepped in before the room could become exactly what whoever planned this wanted. Nobody accuses anyone yet. Caleb looked at me. You think I did this? I think your account accessed a file. That is not the same thing. Correct. His shoulders dropped slightly. Vincent noticed. So did I. We verify first, I said. Then we decide what the evidence means. Vincent looked at me. Your call. There it was again. Public trust. Dangerous, useful, and strangely heavier every time he gave it. Margaret checked the corridor ahead. Administrative floor is still clear. Security is waiting near the east stairwell. Good, I said. We keep moving. Caleb frowned. Should I come with you? Yes. Why? Because if your account was used, separating you now helps nobody. Vincent gave a small nod. Stay with us. Caleb obeyed. No jokes this time. The east corridor was narrow and quiet, lined with framed hotel photographs and closed conference room doors. Our footsteps sounded louder than they should have. I hated quiet hallways during emergencies. They gave the imagination too much space. Margaret walked several feet ahead, receiving updates from legitimate security. Vincent stayed beside me exactly as he promised. Not in front. Not behind. Beside. You are checking every door, he said softly. Occupational damage. Habit. Trauma with professional branding. His mouth almost curved. You joke when you are nervous. I joke when I am awake. We reached the junction near the private elevator. Margaret stopped. Security says the east stairwell is clear, but the elevator just received a manual call from this floor. I looked at the closed doors. Nobody requested it. Not from our group. Vincent's posture changed instantly. We. Take the stairs. Yes. Caleb looked at the elevator, then at me. You knew they expected Vincent to use it. They expected him to use something familiar. I pointed toward the stairwell door. So we used what was never on the plan. We moved through the secured stairwell and down 1 level, where 2 verified hotel security officers waited with identification Margaret confirmed before we approached. Nobody rushed. Nobody raised their voice. The whole thing felt almost boring. That was perfect. Boring meant controlled. At the next landing, one officer quietly informed Margaret that the 4 false staff members had been isolated from guest areas and authorities were on the way. No confrontation. No spectacle. Just containment. Caleb exhaled so hard I heard it. So it is over? I shook my head. The immediate problem, maybe. Vincent looked at me. But not the leak. Exactly. We continued toward the secured administrative suite. As we entered, Trevor and 2 other family members who had been redirected earlier were already there. Trevor looked at me, then at Vincent. You really followed Logan out through a staff stairwell? Vincent removed his jacket and placed it over the back of a chair. Yes. Trevor blinked. You let him choose the route. Vincent looked at him like the question was stranger than the answer. He was the only person in the building who understood what was happening. Nobody laughed. Trevor glanced at me, embarrassed. I guess I owe you an apology. You owe me several. Fair. I sat near the conference table and finally let myself breathe normally. Margaret opened the access report from Caleb's account. The login time was from the previous afternoon. Device location, family office. Authentication method, Valid credentials. Caleb looked sick. I was not there yesterday afternoon. Vincent turned toward him. Where were you? Providence. Business lunch. I have receipts, driver records, everything. I looked at Margaret. Then verify it. Caleb stared at me. You believe me? I believe evidence. He gave a humorless laugh. You really do not make anything easy. Easy is how we got here. Vincent sat beside me rather than taking the head chair. Margaret began cross-checking Caleb's alibi through ordinary records. I looked at the access report again. Something bothered me. The account had not only opened the badge template, it had also viewed the internal family schedule 17 minutes later. Same device. Same session. Whoever used Caleb's credentials wanted both identity access and timing. I looked at Vincent. The account did not just make badges possible. His expression tightened. What else? I turned the screen toward him. It gave them your schedule too. Caleb went completely still. Trevor stopped breathing for a second. I looked around the room and felt the final shape of the problem forming. Whoever did this did not borrow Caleb's account for one mistake. I tapped the 2 access entries. They used it to build the entire plan. Caleb's alibi arrived in pieces. A restaurant receipt from Providence. A parking record. A driver log. A calendar entry. On the surface, it looked clean. Too clean. I stared at the times until my eyes started to hurt. You are doing the face again, Vincent said. What face? The one where everyone else should become nervous. Trevor quietly moved his coffee farther from me. I am learning. I ignored him and checked the timeline again. Caleb's lunch reservation started at 1 o'clock. The family office login happened at 2:17. Providence was nearly an hour from Boston under good conditions. That should have cleared him. It almost did. Then I noticed the driver log. Caleb, what time did you leave the restaurant? He answered immediately. Around 3. You stayed for 2 hours? Business lunch. With whom? A client. Name? He hesitated. Small. Barely there. James Nolan. Margaret was already checking the reservation record. I kept looking at Caleb. Did your driver stay outside? Yes. The entire time? I assume so. You assume? His expression tightened. Logan, what exactly are you suggesting? Nothing yet. Vincent leaned closer to the screen. You found something. Maybe. He gave me a look. You hate that word. I hate being wrong more. Margaret looked up. The restaurant confirms Mr. Moretti arrived at 12:56 and left at 1:38. Silence. Caleb blinked. That cannot be right. The payment was closed at 1:36, she continued. And there is no James Nolan listed on the reservation. Trevor turned toward him slowly. Caleb stood. This is ridiculous. Vincent did not move. Neither did I. Sit down, Vincent said quietly. Caleb looked at him. Then at me. He's Saturday. Maybe the restaurant records are wrong. Possible, I said. So we keep verifying. I checked the driver records next. The vehicle returned toward Boston at 1:44. A toll record placed it near the city before 2. Suddenly the timeline stopped protecting him. Your car was back in Boston before the account was accessed, I said. Caleb's face changed. Not fear. Calculation. I knew that expression. People made it when they stopped deciding whether to lie and started deciding which lie might survive. I was not in the car. Where were you? I took another meeting. With whom? I do not remember. Trevor actually whispered. That is bad. Thank you, Trevor. Caleb glared at him. Vincent's voice stayed controlled. Answer, Logan. Caleb looked at me. You really think you are in charge now? There it was. Not denial. Resentment. Sharp and familiar. The same contempt he had shown at dinner, only stripped of humor. No, I said. I think the evidence is in charge. Margaret received another message. Her eyes moved across the screen, then stopped. Security recovered the internal access record tied to the badge template. The session also opened a private family memo. Vincent's jaw tightened. Which memo? She turned the tablet toward us. It was about me. My attendance. My relationship to Vincent. A note explaining that I would remain with him throughout the memorial because Vincent preferred not to leave me alone at large clan events. My stomach went cold. That was the missing piece. Not just schedule. Not just routes. Me. Vincent looked at Caleb. You had access to that memo. Caleb said nothing. So did others, I said. But the same account opened all 3 files. Caleb finally laughed, but there was no humor in it. You are very proud of yourself. Not especially. You think because you noticed a few badges, everyone suddenly respects. You. Vincent's expression hardened. I lifted one hand before he could speak. Let him continue. Caleb's eyes flashed. This family used to mean something. Strength. Loyalty. Discipline. Then Vincent started listening to outsiders. Lawyers. Consultants. An Omega who tells him when to sit down. The room went still. Trevor looked genuinely shocked. I felt strangely calm. So you gave strangers access to family information to prove Vincent was becoming weak. Caleb looked away. That was enough. Vincent spoke quietly. Were those men hired to target me? Caleb said nothing. Margaret's phone vibrated again. Her face changed. Authorities have identified the 4 false staff members. They were hired intermediaries connected to a planned attempt against Mr. Moretti. No details. None were needed. Vincent closed his eyes for 1 second. Then he opened them and looked at Caleb. You used Logan to shape my movement. Caleb's silence answered for him. I expected Vincent to explode. Instead, he looked at me. What now? That question mattered more than anything else. I breathed slowly. Now we do not become what Caleb expected. Vincent waited. We preserve everything. We let security and authorities handle him. We protect the clan without turning it against itself. Trevor stared at me. After all this, you are still thinking about the whole family? I looked around the room. Someone has to. Vincent nodded once. Then that is what we do. Caleb looked at him in disbelief. You are really taking orders from him. Vincent's answer was immediate. No. He looked at me, calm and certain. I am trusting my partner. And for the first time all night, nobody in the room looked at me like an Omega standing beside an Alpha. They looked at me like the reason the Alpha was still standing there at all. 1 week later, I walked into the Moretti family conference room and immediately knew Vincent had done something. My chair was gone. No, I said. Vincent looked up from the head of the table. You have not even heard the explanation. I know symbolism when I see it. Trevor covered a smile with his coffee cup. Margaret stood near the far wall reviewing updated security documents, while several senior family members took their usual seats. The room looked almost exactly as it had before the memorial. Same polished table, same dark wood, same expensive silence. Except Caleb was not there. His access had been revoked, every relevant record had been preserved, and the investigation was now being handled by legal counsel and the proper authorities. Nobody had tried to turn the family against itself. That mattered more to me than I expected. I looked at Vincent again. Where's my chair? He gestured beside him. A new chair had been placed directly at his right. Not behind him. Not halfway down the table. Beside him. Absolutely not, I said. Logan, this is dramatic. It is furniture. Furniture can be dramatic. Have you seen hotel lobbies? Trevor laughed. This time, the sound did not feel sharp. It did not feel like something aimed at me. That was new. Vincent waited. No command. No alpha tone. Just patience. I walked toward the chair and Saturday. I am only doing this because standing would make the symbolism worse. Naturally. An older advisor across the table frowned slightly. Is that seat for your Omega now? The room went quiet. My shoulders tightened automatically. I hated that reaction. Hated that one word could still make me feel smaller when spoken the wrong way. Vincent did not raise his voice. He did not look angry. He simply said, no, the advisor blinked. Vincent looked at me first, then back at him. It is for my partner. There it was. Simple. Clean. No speech. No performance. My chest felt unexpectedly warm. I looked down at the folder in front of me because apparently eye contact had become emotionally irresponsible. You practiced that, I muttered. Vincent almost smiled. I did not. You definitely practiced that. Trevor whispered. He probably did. Vincent gave him a look. Trevor immediately became interested in his notes. The meeting began with revised event security procedures, staff verification rules, and new limits on family office access. Margaret explained that internal records would now require stronger review before private event credentials could be issued. No single family member would be able to approve sensitive changes alone. Vincent asked questions, but he did not dominate the discussion. When Margaret reached the section about emergency movement procedures, he looked at me. Anything to add? Every face turned toward me. A week earlier, that would have felt like judgment. Now it felt like expectation. Different weight. Yes, I said. Stop treating normal routines like they are automatically safe just because they are familiar. Trevor nodded seriously. I continued. And please stop keeping outdated staff identities inside easily reused event files. Optimism is not an access control system. Someone at the far end laughed. Then another person did. I realized they were laughing with me. That was going to take some adjustment. After the meeting, everyone slowly filed out. Trevor paused beside my chair. For what it is worth, I was wrong about you. That narrows it down very little. He smiled. Fair. Then he left. Vincent stayed behind. You all right? I looked at the empty room. I think so. Think. People listened to me for an entire hour. It was unsettling. You will survive. I stood and gathered my folder. Vincent walked toward the door, then stopped before opening it. He waited for me. Not ahead. Beside. I noticed. Of course I noticed. Ready? He asked. Yes. We stepped into the hallway together. A week ago, someone had tried to turn the way Vincent cared about me into a weakness. Instead, it became the reason he learned to trust me differently. The family had mocked the quiet Omega who noticed too much. Now they checked the room when I stopped smiling. And Vincent no longer asked me to stand behind him when danger appeared. He simply stood beside me and trusted that I would see what he could not.